Julius Malema finds himself in the Madlanga Commission crosshairs. National Treasury holds back money to many municipalities, including the city of Johannesburg. And perhaps it's time to stop giving some of the biggest and richest companies in the world South African tax money. Welcome to the Political Insider. This episode is brought to us by our partners at Trade Nation. If you want to trade international markets, any markets, Trade Nation could be the platform for you. So kicking off is the evidence that emerged yesterday at the Madlanga Commission, which outlined a plot between Feroz Khan, Mohammed Said, and Julius Malema to coerce the then Inspector General of Intelligence, Settler Mamuro Dintwe, to lie under oath. And by doing this, the conspirators decided this would create the grounds to have him removed. He had become a problem for the functioning of their little criminal enterprise. The questions related to Timothy Maramuto, who the Amabungani Center for Investigative Journalists had previously described as a former drug dealer, previously recruited and paid by crime intelligence. So this was at the Madlanga Commission, where evidence leader Matthew Chaskelson put it to the commission that Julius Malema was asked to ensure that for Lieutenant General Feroz Khan's questions to Dintwe were asked via Parliament when Dintwe was appearing before Parliament, and that it would, in their minds, they had concocted these really awkward questions that Dintwe would either have to agree to having met this guy Maramuto or lie about it. So, and once he lied about it because he wouldn't admit to meeting him, they would then, could be grounds for his removal. And at the time, Dintwe was Feroz Khan's boss. So the questions that were put to Julius Malema from Feroz Khan was that he was to ask Dintwe in Parliament was, what gratification did the Inspector General of Intelligence enjoy from Timothy Maramuto? Now, you can imagine if you've got a top cop and he gets asked a question like that, they were anticipating that Dintwe would say, I didn't get any gratification from Timothy Maramuto. It's a bit of a gotcha question. How long has the Inspector General been a captured public servant of Timothy Maramuto? Which, once again, one of those questions. But it wasn't only Julius Malema who was being sent instructions by Khan to ask these difficult questions, because unsurprisingly, Feroz Khan sent a similar questions, but a different set of questions to yet another member of Parliament, and this won't shock you at all. It was former Minister of Police Becky Cele. And Said had also messaged to Feroz Khan saying that this is what Julius Malema sent to me now. This is what Juju sent to me now, thereby implying that the two sets of questions were actually from Malema. Khan had replied with thanks and added, let's go to war. These guys sound like high school boys in the locker room. And another message of Khan said, this should get him to lie, and in return we can ask for his removal because he lied under oath at Parliament. Said later replied, absolutely, he's going to deny it, and then he is finished. Bye-bye to that part of a female's anatomy. Unsurprisingly, Julius Malema has denied any involvement with such a plot. But that wasn't the only time his name was mentioned in the commission yesterday, because remember, the commission was talking about the evidence that it had gathered that it was going to be putting to General Khan, who was due to meet at the commission last week, when sadly he couldn't make it because he had an unfortunate firearm incident in his Suzuki Bilano, outside of his luxury house in Houghton Estate. So the commission decided to hear the evidence anyway in his absence, which could make it worse because he can't sit and deny it or put it into any other kind of context or anything that would make it seem like he's not anything but completely guilty. So Julius Malema's name also surfaced because there was discussion about the looting of VBS Bank, which also emerged from this Feroz Khan evidence. Chaskalson referred to a message that Mohammed Said, now remember Mohammed Said worked for Carney Links, which is Adriano Mazzotti's company. Adriano Mazzotti is the benefactor of Julius Malema, and Julius Malema lives in Mazzotti's house in Sandhurst because we can't go slumming it around. He referred to a message that Mohammed Said had allegedly forwarded to Feroz Khan, apparently from Malema on the 15th of June 2021, where Malema wanted to know who the complainant in a case registered with the police in Sandton was, and he gave the case number. And the case turns out to be a VBS fraud case. Now, Feroz Khan replied with a screen grab from a police system, so he was now giving this information, that the complainant was Anush Ruplal. Now, Anush Ruplal was the curator of VBS Bank, kind of the guy trying to fix up the cookbooks, and bring the right people to book. And the Sandton case that Ruplal had initiated related to the fraud involved with the bank. Now, remember that as mentioned by Matthew Chaskalson, Julius Malema and Floyd Shivambu had already been mentioned in the case. Now, evidence leader Chaskalson read into evidence these messages between Khan and Mohammed Said. And Chaskalson said that Khan later sent Said a photograph of Malema and Said around a dinner table with two other people. So clearly there was a bit of a cozy relationship between all of these people. And the next month, in September 2021, Said sent to Feroz Khan a voice note saying, Juju called me now. He says that your things are coming along very, very nicely. It's moving along very rapidly. Just give him some time and it's going to happen for sure. To which Mohammed Said sent Khan a subsequent message saying that Malema had apparently told him that Khan will never ever resign, no matter what. This is a fight and we will emerge victorious. Now, in most countries, this kind of thing, the person either appears or it's the end of their political career. This being South Africa, we'll have to see how this plays out. But it doesn't look good for Julius Malema. I do know that these are cases that have been mentioned before, and Julius Malema seems to be the Teflon man. He seems to be that too many people are scared of implicating him in any wrongdoing, and it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out. But it's the first senior politician whose name has been mentioned, other than suspended police minister Senzo Mkhunu, who we are not going to forget is suspended. And at some point, the president must decide if this guy is employed or not employed. We have already wasted a couple of million rand in the last year while he has sat at home in Durban, and the rest of us has had to work. Before we carry on, I'd like to encourage you, please, to subscribe to The Political Insider. Help us to grow the channel so that more people can get our messages. And we really do appreciate your support. We have kept a very close eye on the city of Johannesburg and its financial woes, because Johannesburg affects the entire country. Do you remember we spoke about the fact that the finance minister had sent a letter to the city of Johannesburg saying, fix up your financial problems or else we're going to withhold money? And then, of course, our mayor, the diminutive Dada Marero, told the finance minister, sorry, finance minister, Mr. Golongwana, you don't really understand finance as well as I do. So Johannesburg is a picture of financial health. I don't know what you're talking about. And we're not only passing a budget, we are going to do everything you told us not to do, which included give a massive bribe to the South African Municipal Workers Union by increasing salaries by 10 billion rand that the city can't afford, employ 700 additional managers, all kinds of things that the finance minister had specifically threatened the city not to do. And, to which Dada Marero said, we'll do what we feel like doing. Well, now the finance minister has said, sorry, just hold my beer. because now we hear that National Treasury is withholding all of the grants, or withholding grants. These are not all the grants. These are what is called equitable share. Every now and again, money gets divvied up and sent to municipalities depending on their size, etc. And they are withholding grants from 68 municipalities, including City of Johannesburg. A total of 110 million rand of municipal equity share that is due to be paid this week will not be paid. In the case of Johannesburg, it amounts to 3.6 billion rand, and the comrades must be pissed off because that's their money. You know, that's their Christmas in July that they were expecting to spend. Now they can't get it. Now, you've got to see it in a light of, this is the same as a parent telling a child who hasn't done their chores that they're not going to get pocket money. The child still knows that they'll get money and they'll still get food, and mommy or daddy will eventually buckle and give me money. But Treasury officials, I mean, I'm not 100% sure. It's great that they're finally acting, because this is 110 billion rand they're withholding, because these municipal entities have wasted billions, a big multiple more of that money. But the Treasury officials said they were certain that service delivery would not be affected. And in the case of the City of Johannesburg, they're probably right, because service delivery has stopped it altogether. We heard more than 2 weeks ago that the city ran out of money to buy fuel. Apparently, they can't even cover their month's expenses. So it's going to be interesting to see how this will make a difference to a city in which we see virtually no street lights working, virtually no traffic lights working, and not a hole without potholes. National Treasury Deputy Director General Ogale Garekwa said that once municipalities had rectified the problems identified by Treasury, the funds would flow. She added that the release of money could happen as soon as 2 weeks, depending on how fast municipalities act. So, what do municipalities have to act on? Well, there's three issues. There's 3 issues which you may have contravened in order to lose your money. Unfunded budgets. This is where, as we have in the case of Johannesburg, your projected revenue was lower than your projected expenditure. In other words, the city is going to make a loss, or the municipal entity is going to make a loss. This is Johannesburg. I presume what she wants is a new spreadsheet that says, oh, sorry, it turns out we found another 1 million ratepayers. We're actually going to make a profit. I'm not sure how this fixes up the problem, unless they don't allow them to adjust the revenue, but only to lower the expenditure. Otherwise, I see that as a useless exercise. Number 2, unpaid creditors. In this case, we're talking about Eskom or your water supply, and it varies on which municipality you're talking to. If the municipalities or metros owe Eskom or their water board, in this case Rand Water, money, they should submit a payment plan. Payment plans are wonderful things, a bit like a business plan. It's only a plan. It doesn't mean anything until you actually pay it. So once again, Johannesburg's in that thing where we owe over 6 billion rand to Eskom. So it's going to be interesting to see what that payment plan looks like. And then number 3 is the biggie. Unauthorized, irregular, fruitless, and wasteful expenditure. Yes, our old friend. All the entities who are not getting their money must furnish Treasury with plans to stop this. I presume that is a cross my heart, I promise not to steal any more money. I presume. What else could they get from the city other than their plan to stop this? They're not sending anybody to jail, so... And then, of course, we get to the crux of the matter. The headline sounds wonderful. We've withheld money to these metros and municipalities that have misbehaved. But the legislation allows for a mere 30 days minimum, and it's never extended beyond 30 days whenever they've withheld money in the past, and a maximum of 120 days, which is exactly how many days there are until the next local government election. But this is a slap on the wrist from Treasury. Believe me, the money's going to flow. No matter how bad the municipal entity is, it's going to flow within a couple of days, and everything will be forgotten as the City of Johannesburg and the city fathers carry on looting. It is a tough time to be a citizen. But remember, we've got local government elections coming up. We've got to vote. We're going to finish off with a story that perhaps it's time to consider some very, very old practices in South Africa. Last Friday, the Chinese motor manufacturer Chery took over the old Nissan vehicle manufacturing plant in Rosslyn in Pretoria. Remember, Nissan said, sayonara, and went back to Japan. Along came Chery and said, thank you, we'll have that. And there was a glittering ribbon-cutting ceremony that was attended by Paul Mashatile and Panyaza Lesufi, two of our best politicians. Now, you've got to say, why would a company, a vehicle manufacturing company, from the world's leading manufacturing country, i.e. China, choose to make cars in South Africa? Well, you guessed it. It's two things. Number one, they're getting a massive kickback from you and me, the taxpayer. And number two, they aren't really building the cars in South Africa. It's more of a lie than anything else. South Africa pays more than 40 billion rand a year to the 7 companies that manufacture vehicles in South Africa. Nice work if you can get it. This program has been in place for decades, but the idea now has been totally perverted. In the past, vehicle manufacture was a big deal. You had plants, you had thousands of workers, you had steel being knocked into place. You didn't have the supply chain you've got today. What are Chery doing? To call this manufacturing is a stretch of the imagination, because Chery are going to ship cars in South Africa in kit form that basically need very minor work to assemble in South Africa. Now, it's not going to create no jobs, but it will create a few jobs. It's not the old assembly line that we see in the movies. This is literally a small operation where you've got to put a couple of bolts together. And let's face it, the minute you see Paul Mashatile and Panyaza Lesufi in the same room shaking hands and smiling, you must get very nervous and you should hold on to your wallets because somebody's getting money. But this is a legacy problem, right? South Africa, for many decades, has bribed international car companies to produce vehicles here. And how does it work? They pay them these fantastical subsidies, which the government then redeems on duties when you and I buy cars in South Africa. So we end up paying about twice as much as what we need to pay. Half of that money goes to the state, who then passes it on to the vehicle manufacturing company. So they don't even try to make a profit in South Africa, literally only producing cars here because they're getting money back to do it. Now, this made sense when you couldn't bring cars out here in kit form. In actual fact, it would build a whole lot of peripheral industries, people that would make seats and people that would make steering wheels and heaven knows what else for the vehicles. When this was put in place, nobody envisaged China as it is today, where they're going to send containers full of component parts that literally just get bolted together, right? And they've changed the game. There is no reason to do this. So all that happens now is that we just pay more for cars. It's inefficient and it costs us a lot of money in our economy and we get very little back, right? And this could possibly explain why Chinese car manufacturers are so keen to donate luxury vehicles to the ANC Women's League so they get stolen by their leaders. Because it's a plum deal. You're getting money for nothing. Right? This is a relic from the past. It's time for all of these car subsidies to go so that you and I can pay half as much for cars, get the economy going because the money is going out of productive hands, going offshore. We don't have these peripheral industries that we used to have. And it's time that South African companies are either run more efficiently and become globally competitive, or we get into different businesses. That's all I have for you on Political Insider. Thank you so much for joining us today. We'll see you again soon.